Greetings, Minecrafters, and welcome to another delightful Minecraft discussion on all things well-being. I'm Dr. Kimberly Quinn, and I'm here today at the beautiful Champlain College campus in Burlington, Vermont, with Dr. Valerie Esposito. Is it okay if I call you Valerie?
Hi, sure. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, of course. Valerie, can you tell us what your role is here at Champlain and how long you've been here?
Sure. I am the program director and I teach in the Environmental Studies and Policy program. And I have been here for 12 years.
Excellent. You and I are the same. I don't know if I knew that. Okay, Valerie, so rumor has it that you'd like to chat with us today about the importance of all of us sort of getting back into nature. Can you tell me a little bit about what pulled you to this topic?
Sure. Yes. Well, lots of reasons. As you know, I teach about the environment, and so I'm very passionate about getting people out there in the environment to enjoy it, so that we can create a closer connection and really feel like stewards of it. And develop positive relationships with the environment.
Wow, this sounds like a really exciting topic, Valerie. And I think in general, right? Though I'm wondering, since we're kind of sort of coming out of the pandemic and all that underlying anxiety is still there and, just the Rona brain, right? Tell us how you think that might be important now more than ever.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we saw obviously a dramatic increase in people staying at home, staying indoors, and in front of screens. And so during coronavirus and absolutely afterwards, it's even more important potentially that people get outside. We have seen there's lots of research that I'm happy to talk about that has proven that being outside has both psychological and physiological benefits to our health, our overall health and well-being. And absolutely, if people can begin to develop practices as we're emerging from being in our home so much, getting into nature and prioritizing getting into nature would be a great practice to work on.
This sounds good. I'm wondering if you can maybe start with the physical benefits. What sorts of physical benefits can we get from nature?
Well, absolutely. Well, first of all, if we're doing any sort of physical activity, that's good for our bodies in general. But research has demonstrated that we've experienced drops in blood pressure. It dissipates stress hormones, decreases anxiety, brooding, and negative emotion, which is going a little into psychological. And interestingly, they also found that breathing in forest air that contains beneficial bacteria, plant-derived essential oils, and negatively charged ions interact with our gut bacteria, and it strengthens our immune system. So just being outside and breathing that fresh air has so many physical benefits.
This sounds really good. That it's just automatically just a good thing for us to get out into nature, which I think we forget sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you and I were talking earlier, Valerie, about the potential psychological benefits and also some research.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to tell us a little bit about that research?
Sure. Well, I first can say there has been a lot of research done on this. So there's been, baseline studies, and then there's been aggregate studies of studies of studies, and so it's very well documented. But so I think to me, the cooler research is, if you have two people and they get baseline kind of psychological and emotional data about where they are starting, and then you send one person for a walk in an urban environment and one person for a walk in a forest environment, like off the charts, the person in the forest environment always comes back with decreased blood pressure, stress hormones have dissipated, decreased anxiety and brooding and negative emotion, increases memory performance, it decreases rumination, that habit of thinking over and over again about causes and consequences of negative experiences. It also decreases neural activity in the area of the brain linked to the risk for mental illness, sparks creativity and problem solving, and improves self-esteem. I mean, there's so many awesome benefits. I'll tell you another cool research that demonstrated that even if you stayed in the lab and you just looked at pictures of an urban environment and pictures of forest or nature, the pictures of forest and nature are the ones that stimulated all of these responses that I just talked about. So I guess I would say number one priority is to get out there. But if for some reason you can't, flip on the nature channel for for 30 minutes, and that could have positive effects as well.
No, I 100% agree, Valerie. And I know that without the woods, the walks in the woods that I take with Giovanni, the golden retriever, I wouldn't even be the same. You just go
Hmm.
out there, it's an immediate,
It is, yeah.
right? Like
Hmm.
decompression.
Yep. And I especially think for us here in Vermont and in the northern hemisphere of the northern climate, we're getting into winter, and we've had our first snowfall recently. And I'm not gonna lie and say that I was like thrilled, and it's cold, and I got I woke up and I was like, oh no, snow. And then I took my dog for a walk, and I saw this beautiful, the sunlight was reflecting on the trees, and there was some light snow falling, and I took a breath, and it gave me a moment to think, yes, I do appreciate this, but I need to be out in it to really enjoy it and kind of appreciate it. So,
Oh my God, you brought up the sun thing. Well, I do love the snow in the winter, but then when the sun hits on the stone, it does the crystally thing, and it's
hmm
just, oh my, that's my favorite.
it's gorgeous.
Okay, so Valerie, you and I were talking about how it's just important to get out there no matter what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
But you're also kind of having a chat with me about something that's more like meditative as
hmm
far as nature. Can you tell us about what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's this term called, and I apologize if I say it incorrectly because it's Japanese, Shinrin-Yoku, which was actually coined by the Japanese government in the 1980s, and it means forest bathing. And it was really a public health initiative to get stressed out business people outside. And that is where some of the research that I've talked about before kind of initiated. Um, but this is a little bit more, like I said, getting outside is great, and going for a hike with your friends and laughing and having fun is great. You'll definitely get some of those benefits that we talked about. But this is a little bit more of a meaningful interaction with nature, and it really is. I like the way you put it, like thinking about meditation, right? So it's more of in trying to engage all of our senses and truly seeing with all of our senses. Giving ourselves over to really be able to communicate with the forest in a deeper way. So this would mean maybe going someplace, and you could go to this place, more than once, and finding a sit spot, right? And in the winter, you want to make sure you're dressed correctly for that. Finding a sit spot and just kind of, sitting there and just being there and using all of your senses. Like I said, we talked a lot about sight and looking at the reflection of the patterns of the sunlight and how that looks on the crystallized snow. In the spring, what does the sap running from the trees smell like and taste like, right? Seeing ants, what are they doing? How are they transporting their food into their underground tunnels in their underground world, right? Listening to the birds and hearing the creaking of the trees and the leaves blowing in the wind, smelling the decaying leaves in the fall, just really, yeah, and then feeling intricate patterns of the bark of an elm tree, right? And the cold snow on your hands, and how does that feel? Lay on the ground, maybe not in the winter, and observe how the sunlight filters through the tree canopy. All of these things um, that really connect you in a deeper way than just walking through the forest.
Cool. And Valerie, that I in Minecraft we do a lot with mindfulness every day, and also gratitude. And I heard a lot of good mindful words in what you were just saying. So I'm thinking of, you were talking about the pandemic and everything, and a lot of us grown-ups have really had a ride, anxiety and overwhelmed and all this stuff. So how do you think forest bathing might help an anxious, overwhelmed, maybe they're a parent and the job, or they've lost a job, whatever? How can that, with this talking about the five senses, how might that help a post-pandemic adult kind of get back into the present moment?
hmm Yeah, that's a great question. I was just thinking, I am someone who I would consider myself a very amateur person who likes to meditate. But I often am, if I'm laying there or sitting down with my eyes closed, there's lots of different directions I can go in. But I think when you're in nature, and you can consider it a form of meditation or not, but you're if you can be fully present, then your mind isn't going to go in these other places. It's going to be like, what are those ants doing? Or, look at the pattern of that coloration of that leaf in fall, that, that change of color in fall. And it just can really engage all of your five senses, that I think it blocks out a lot of that other noise that, especially during COVID and in general, that, and, college students, that can always be in the background. I think it can really help block that out very well.
I love the way you put that, the background noise. I love that. It just zooms in on the here and now. And drowns out the background noise. That's awesome. Okay, so this sounds great. And so I'm wondering, because you and I are up here in, gorgeous northern Vermont. So how, Valerie, can, sort of everyone, people who are in urban areas, go out and to find their version of nature. And also, is this a solo thing, or can they do it with friends?
Sure, yeah. Like I said, the ideal is if you can be in a spot that's a little bit forested or away from other things. But if not, there's always ways that you can figure out to make this work. So you could find a place in a park and, observe a tree and just be near the tree. You could, if you really can't get out, I mean, ideally you should be outside for part of it. But if you can't, just look at something out your window. If there's any sort of nature out your window, try to focus on that and kind of connect with that. I do have my students do it's called a phenology log in one of my classes. So they have to pick a spot that they're going to return to once a week for the entire semester, and pick the sit spot and really observe both what's happening that day, as well as kind of analyze the changes that happen over, the 15 weeks that they're doing it. The change of seasons and what type of wildlife is emerging and what's happening on the trees and the plants and the ground and the soil and the weather patterns. And so, I think once we start to develop these observational tools, that can really, it's kind of like, I don't know. I was going to say yoga. It's like, once you start it, you might be all creaky. And then you see like 2 weeks in, you're like, wow, I'm feeling toned and, and powerful and ready. So I think once you just start small and you build your muscle, and you can really see a massive difference in your life.
Yes, I love that. It's kind of like you're toning your mindfulness muscle.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's true. It's true, I think, in general, right? Whatever we practice, we get, we get better at, so it gets easier.
Yep.
I liked what you said about when I sort of tuned into the weather thing, because I find myself sometimes when I'm skiing or snowshoeing or whatever, or it's in the summer, when you look up and it's kind of fast weather and the clouds are kind of, it's just wild to stare up at that.
Yep, absolutely.
And make shapes like a little kid.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I was actually convinced that the ocean was in my near future, because I kept seeing whales. Like, I kept seeing humpback whales. But I mean, it's just when you focus on something like you're saying with your students, with the leaves changing seasonally, and wildlife and the ants thing. I think that focus even brings us more in the present.
Oh, and you did ask about, if do it alone or with friends. You could do it any way you want. So, again, like me taking a hike in the woods with my 7 and 10-year-old tromping around is probably not going to be the height of my mindfulness. But even that, that's great. And we look for curiosities in the, on our hike and things like that. But if you could obviously do it alone, but if you did want to do it with a friend, I would recommend that you both kind of pick your sit spots or what you're interested in really connecting with, and do that kind of silently for a while, and then come together and you could talk about the things that you observed and felt and smelled and heard, and then you can kind of share that, and that can actually work on increasing this mindfulness muscle as well, because maybe they picked up on something that you didn't, and you did, and vice versa. So
I like that too. Okay, Valerie, this is sounding really good to me. And what sort of just jumped out at me was the connection, how nature sort of facilitates or catalyzes, or I don't know what to say, but makes it easier for us to connect with the self and therefore with other people. So maybe you can, help us with that, with some of you had mentioned the psychological parts.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So, we talked about how being in nature can dissipate your stress hormones, can decrease anxiety and brooding and negative emotion, and decrease rumination and, thinking about negative experiences, and also improve self esteem. So, all of these, I think, are foundational to be able to make you feel more connected, or, kind of just better about yourself as a person, and then really give you the desire to connect with others, right? Like, we're not going to be able to be our best friends, parents, colleagues, siblings, anything, if we have all of those things going on in our brain and we're stressed and anxious, and and sometimes that stress and anxiousness, right, like takes the place of us being able to feel empathy and connection with others. So all of those amazing psychological benefits are really going to help us be able to connect with other people as well.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Valerie. Like anyone in my family knows too. Like if I'm having the monkey mind going on, and I'm completely different when I go out in the woods with Giovanni, even if it's like 20 minutes or less.
Right.
Come back and it's stepping back, looking at something different,
Yep. Absolutely.
breathing fresh air, starry night or a brook running, and I'm like a brand new penny, honestly. And so let's say, and we also know, given the pandemic and all this virtual stuff we did, and some people, just with job situations being very stressful, how might you encourage? How do you make it happen?
Yeah,
How
that's
do
a
you?
great question. Well, first of all, realize, like you said, even just 20 minutes. I mean, it does not have to be a long time. It's not like you have to carve like 3 hours out of your day and drive up to, Mount Mansfield to be able to get these benefits, right? So I think the first thing is just figuring out where a good place for you to go is, ideally close to your house. So you feel, kind of that eliminates a barrier to get there. And, build it into your schedule. Treat it like you would exercise, or I do have, I'll be totally honest, I have meditate on my calendar every day. I maybe achieve that 3 times a week. That's, and that's great, but build it into your calendar. Also as developing new habits, right? Like give yourself a reward afterwards. What is it, something that you really want to do and you're looking forward to if you do this? I would argue that after a while, I think you'll see the reward is actually being there itself. But if you have to get over that hurdle, do yourself, I don't know, have a peanut butter cup if you need it, or or watch 5 minutes of silly YouTube cat videos, whatever it is. Give yourself a reward and recognize that you really are doing something very good for yourself. That's going to have long-term benefits for you and for your relationships, ideally.
No, I think that's great, Valerie, and that also brought me back just to how difficult it can be to practice good self care, which is what this is, part of it, right?
Absolutely.
And I just remember being a young mom with little kids at home, and it was, you said schedule it. I literally used to schedule a bath or
Yeah.
something,
Yep.
like a dentist appointment for a root canal,
Right.
because if you have a root canal and you have to, the people are going to figure it out. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. Yeah.
So that's extreme, but I think that with the pandemic and this sort of being overturned as a country and world, I mean, I agree with you that I think we actually have to, in order to prioritize, we have to actually put it on your phone or your old school calendar or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Well, and also maybe recognizing that as a, I don't want to say valid, like as a fun activity. Again, if you do have a friend, right? Instead of, you could go to the bar after maybe, but instead of just going right there, go do that first, right, with your friend, and then you can over a drink, you can talk about the things you observed and how cool it was to be there, right?
Yeah, this is
So
great. Like mindful wine drinking.
yeah, right.
Certainly sounds very enjoyable. Wow, Valerie, this whole thing just sounds so great. And as you know, I'm a big fan of nature too. And you brought us to a new level though with the forest bathing. It's just like a deeper dive, right? Meditative and I also like how you made it a sort of made people sort of aware that you don't have to be in the northern Vermont woods. You can be in
Right.
Manhattan and under right in a 15th story or something. And I just want to really thank you so much for making us all aware of how important getting back into nature is, and this new term called forest bathing. So thank you, Val.
Well, thanks for having me. This was really fun.
What a fantastic use of our life minutes. And this is just a nice place to wind it up, and I'm hoping everybody gets out there. So, this is Dr. Kimberly Quinn and
Dr. Valerie Esposito.
Signing off from the beautiful Champlain College in Burlington, Vermont. Have a mindful day.
in nature.